Well, good morning. It's 8:15 on a beautiful Friday morning. I'm down here at Buckley's Waterhole and on the beach here this morning just to photograph different types of birds. I've been photographing around Lake Eden, I've gone to Sandy Camp, and recently I've seen posts by Sharon, who lives on Bribie Island. She's been showing all these beautiful birds up on Bribie Island here, the pied oyster catchers, the black swans with their cygnets in Buckley's Hole here. So I thought I'd come up here this morning to take some photos, but what I really want to do this morning is to test out a polarizing filter on my Nikon 200 to 500 millimeter lens for wildlife. Now you might think like, well, polarizers are just for landscape photography. Well, they also can be used for wildlife, and that is because especially in a place like here where we've got white sand, white birds like the oyster catchers or egrets, pelicans, a polarizer will just tone it down and will give us detail in these birds. I've already had a beautiful morning. I've photographed the swans with their cygnets. I've taken some video. And I just got some video of the pied oyster catchers mating. That was just incredible. Oh, look at that! Now I'm using my new Photo Pro monopod with the feet, and you can see it's just standing by itself there. This is why I was really wanting a good monopod with feet. And if you're interested in a good monopod, I'll put a link here where you can see my review on it. This morning is all about taking photos and video with the polarizer. I've got a 95mm filter on here. I've got the whole CPL filter, and I'm just testing it out to see how good a CPL filter is, how easy it is to use, and it's not that easy. I'm using auto ISO, so the ISO is adjusting itself, so it's very hard to see when the polarizer clicks in. But I found a very easy way, and that is to look at my ISO. The higher the ISO, the more my CPL filter acts. And after a while this morning, I've been looking, and oh, okay, this is when the CPL filter clicks in, because I might be shooting at ISO 500, and when I turn the CPL filter around, the ISO will go up to 800 or 850, and I go like, okay, less light, because that's what a CPL filter does. It cuts out some of the light. Let's keep walking along. Let's see what we can find. The tide's high, it's going down now, so let's hope that we can see some more birds. But already my day is going good, and I hope your day is going good. So let's keep walking around. Here are some photos that I took while at the beach testing out the polarizing filter to see whether a polarizing, a CPL filter, was worth using for photographing wildlife and especially birds. I tested on shore birds, I tested when birds were flying, just to see if it was worth using a CPL filter. So I've got the CPL filter turned all the way to give me maximum polarization. My ISO is at 640. Now I'm going to turn it to remove it. There. So now I'm at ISO 500. So my CPL filter polarizer is basically zero. So this is a side-by-side. The CPL filter not being used is on the left, and the CPL filter being used is on the right. Clearly see a difference with exactly the same setting, apart from the ISO being higher. It's my view of the beach near Buckley's Waterhole. It's beautiful. And the pied oyster catchers have just moved a little bit further down there. So I'm back in my office, and I had a great time at the beach today, walking along the beach, taking some photos. But my aim today was to use a CPL or a polarizing filter to take photos of wildlife, especially of birds. And I got quite a few different types of birds with the polarizing filter. And when I was taking them, I was like, well, I'm not really seeing any difference. Sometimes it looked a little bit darker. So I knew I was going to have to wait to get back home to see the results, because trying to look through the viewfinder or looking on the LCD screen to see the difference is very hard. Also, I wanted to take sample photos of without having the CPL filter on. Well, the CPL filter was on, but in the neutral positions, you have to turn a CPL filter to get its use, and you just keep turning until you see that the CPL filter is working. And when I did it, I was in two minds saying, is it worth it? Is it really worth all the trouble? Because it is a little bit of a hassle using a CPL filter. And I stated that I wanted a screw-on CPL filter and not a magnetic CPL filter. Now you might ask why. Here is something that you will have to think about if you're using a screw-on CPL filter for wildlife. Normally I'm using this big lens hood for my 200 to 500mm to stop any glare hitting the front of the lens. But as you can see, I've got a very small rubber lens hood on, and this is the only hassle, because to adjust it, I've got to put my hand all the way to the front here and turn the lens hood, which is screwed onto the filter. And I've got to keep doing that until I see my ISO climb. And if I'm shooting towards the left, I adjust it accordingly. But if I then move towards the right, you have to adjust it, because if you don't, the CPL filter is not doing its job. It's not like an ND filter where everything stays the same. Here, when I'm going from left to right, then when I'm at the right here, I've got to readjust it. And this is where I found hard getting sample photos. Take a look at a couple of these sample photos that I can show you here. You can see that they're not exactly the same, because I was using my monopod. So as soon as I took the photo, I had to reach over, adjust the CPL filter, then take another photo. And with the monopod, I couldn't get it exactly the same. So the next day I went to Black Duck Lagoon, which is just down the road from me, set up my tripod, and I took 4 different types of images to show you why you should be using a CPL filter. And I stated that I want to see more detail, for example in the pelican feathers, because they're white. Well, I didn't see too much of that, but what I did see, and sometimes you don't realize that, sometimes you forget what a CPL filter does in landscape photography. What it does is it just gives you more vibrance. It cuts the glare. Green leaves become greener. The blue sky becomes bluer. Everything is like adding vibrance to your image without doing any post-processing. And all the photos you're going to see here, they are just straight JPEGs off my camera. No editing, no cropping, just I downloaded the JPEGs from my Nikon Z6 II and put them into this video. So let's take a look at these sample photos now. Okay, so we've got some ducks on the water here. I'll bring down my shutter speed to 1600 because it doesn't need to be that high. Auto ISO 320, no CPL. Auto ISO 640 with the CPL. I'll bring it back to neutral. So I'm at ISO 560 at 1250th of a second. Now we'll move the CPL filter. Now I'm at ISO 640 with the same settings. Let's take a look at the photos. Let's test out this CPL filter on this Australasian data. I'll bring the CPL filter to neutral. I'm at 1250th of a second, f5.6, auto ISO 200. Now we'll move the CPL filter. There, auto ISO 320. Let's see the differences. This is the male Australasian data, 1250th of a second, f5.6, auto ISO 640, no CPL filter. Move the CPL filter around. I'm up to ISO 1000. I'll just wait till he stops moving to get a correct metering. There, auto ISO 1000. So here are the 4 examples that I took. The photo on the left is when the polarizing filter was set to neutral, and the photo on the right is when the polarizing filter is set to its maximum. You can see from the first image here with the duck, there is less reflections on the right of when the polarizing filter is being used compared to the image on the left, but also look at the colors. The colors are much more vibrant on the right. Same with the tree photo. The left photo, the polarizing filter is neutral. On the right, it is at its maximum. Again, you can see the colors are much more vibrant and there is less reflections on the water. You can clearly see that in this image. Now look at the photo of the data when it was in the tree. It's hard to see here, but the photo on the right with the polarizing filter, the blue sky is much bluer and also the green leaves are much more vibrant. Now the last image here of the data in the tree is clearly seen. You can hardly see the data, but really I want to pay attention to the greenery. On the left, without the polarizing filter, everything is sort of very bland. And look on the right, it is very vibrant. The colors really pop. So you can see in these sample photos why I'm going to be, from now on, using a CPL filter. Maybe the only time I'm not going to use it if I'm in an area, let's say, where there's just bush and there's no need for a CPL filter, because you have to understand a CPL filter takes nearly one stop of light away from you. So if you don't need that CPL filter, if I'm walking in a forest, which I rarely do really with this lens because I need to use a very high ISO, and at f5.6 this lens is slow, so I rarely go out into the forest to photograph birds with this lens. But if you are in that situation, then you wouldn't need a CPL filter. If you're at the beach or if you're at a lagoon, then using a CPL filter will be so advantageous to you. Like I said, I didn't know whether I was going to like using a CPL filter. I'd forgotten about making the colors more vibrant. All I was thinking about was getting more detail in the image, getting more detail in an egret or in a pelican. That's what I was wanting. And I didn't get everything that I wanted in that. It was only half. But the flip side was, wow, when I took these sample photos, I could see so much difference. And even at the beach, look at these two photos. Although they're not exactly the same, look at the photos. You can see in the background, the water is a little bit darker, but there's less reflections. You're getting less brightness. So you're getting more detail in your shot. And as you saw in the photo of the tree at the lagoon, the tree didn't have too much difference, but it was the water. One, it was much greener because it added more vibrance, a bit more contrast. And two, it just cut out so much of the glare, which if there was a duck or another bird on the water, that bird would stand out so much more. All in all, I'm glad that I went out and I did this test, because you can read reviews on the internet, you can watch reviews about using a polarizing filter for wildlife on YouTube, but until you try it, because your type of wildlife photography or bird photography might be very different to what people on YouTube are photographing. So it's always best you take it with a grain of salt. The results were 50-50 on YouTube and on the internet. Some people saying, great, use it. Other people saying, waste of time. Well, like I said, in the forest, waste of time. But on the beach, at the lagoon, or if I'm just walking in a park, then I will definitely be using a screw-on CPL filter, because when you're moving about, you have to adjust it to the light. And if you found value in this video, give it a big thumbs up. Stay safe, enjoy your wildlife photography, and I'll see you next time.